Guys, I just want to thank you for coming here today. My name's Dan. I'll be chairing today. I know we're mic'd up, but that's only just not for your, well, I'm going to say, it seems like suggesting you're massively hard of hearing. It's only because we're recording it, and this allows us to go and sort of get a good clean record of the event. I want to thank you all for coming here. I just think this, I know this may be the first time in history in Bournemouth University, but I definitely think the panel is outnumbering the audience. I think it is. So it's almost like I'm hoping you don't feel intimidated by us. It really does. It feels like we are lining up for a duel today, and we're taking you on. I think the people probably who aren't here, the audience should be, I think, absolutely massive for this audience, for this panel rather, for this audience. We should have a huge audience today, but I think the people who aren't here are kind of so busy on ChatGPT, too busy to come here, to get along with things. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the panel to introduce themselves. I'm hoping that once we get the debate going, to involve yourselves, if you've got any points that you want to go and raise. When we do that, just if you can hang on so I can bring the microphone over to you and just ask you a question and I'll grab it back afterwards. That's just to make sure that we do go and capture the stuff for the record. Okay, so I say my name is Dan, and I'm just going to go round handing the microphone to the panel. And the first one, Geza, if you can just introduce yourself, who you're from, and just what's your sort of, something that Steph said a minute ago, what's your take on AI? What's your take on that? So, Geza?
My name is Geza. I work at the psychology department. I'm a lecturer. And I do neuroscience, and I use machine learning techniques in my day job. That is sort of my connection to AI.
Okay, and just if I can just pass on to Kevin. Kevin, you've done research with, I think it was evolutionary algorithms and things like that in the past. You've taught, you've been a demonstrator, you've taught, you're a proper teacher. You've taught in schools and the university. Yeah. If I can just ask this. Your take on that, I think it's too early to say how important or how significant AI is.
Yeah, I would say certainly with the latest iteration of it, which is this ChatGPT thing, it's going to make a change. Whether it's a big change or not, I don't know. I would say at the moment, for me, a bigger change was when the first search engines came online. In my mind, ChatGPT is just an advanced form of search engine. It's a very good one, it would seem, but I think that the jury's out on whether it's the next big thing or not.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Splendid. Steph, if I can just bring you in. Thanks. Steph, I was just going to say that although you've done stuff on academic integrity and that sort of stuff with AI, what have you come along here to tell us today? What's your view? What's if you had just a sort of elevator pitch about it, where would you go with that?
Wow, that's a big question because it's such a fast-moving environment. All the different technologies suddenly becoming available. We're all paying attention to it. And I'm looking at it, I'm a learning developer, and my job is to work with students to help them develop their writing, and then suddenly across the landscape has come the ChatGPT and a whole load of other software, and looking at the conflict or the tensions between, is this software going to be supporting students or is it actually going to be hindering them? And the other perspective I've been looking at is, well, how am I supposed to support students with the technology I don't quite understand yet? So, like a lot of folk, I'm looking at this technology, how it's changing, how it's evolving. It seems every week it's a roller coaster ride of, oh my God, what are they releasing this minute, this week? And I am questioning, what am I actually going to be teaching in September?
Sure.
And preparing the students for and protecting their own academic integrity on their academic journey. So that's kind of where I am.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. Okay, if you can pass on to Kat. Now, Kat, you're our first student on the panel, so we've got a mixture of students and staff, because I think it is just sort of like staff preaching down. You were saying, Steph, we really need to hear the student perspective on that. Kat, I just take it that you've kind of like been alarmed without naming people because they may be in the audience, but you've been alarmed at the usage.
Yes, so I'm Catherine, I'm a final year journalism student. I probably offer the alternate student perspective in the sense that I haven't actually tried using ChatGPT yet, so I'm probably in the minority for that, and my concern is over, a bit like you, the integrity of academia and education, also the reasons why people do degrees nowadays, how much value is placed on them, particularly in arts, where now there's a almost not cheat code, but yeah, and also where the line is with accessible technology. So, for example, whether Grammarly's AI, because I have learning processing issues, is that appropriate? So those are kind of my areas of interest.
Okay,
yeah.
I will come back to you in a second. And John, if I can just get you to introduce yourself, but one thing I was going to ask you is this. Is it the case, in your view, that it's wrong to call it, I think I had a chat with you and you said you don't like using the term AI or artificial intelligence. Is that a fair assessment? So just if you introduce yourself and then look at that point.
So yeah, I'm John Macy. I'm senior lecturer in computer animation, but I teach computer programming mainly. So there's a number of things to unpack there. So AI is such a loaded term. What we're seeing is machine learning, statistical inference. It's basically, it's got so much information, it can just sort of use stats to go, that's what you're after. So if you can sort of understand how that works, you can see what's being developed. You see it a lot with online content that is obviously machine generated. Product A versus product B in a Google search now, 99% of the time, that's machine generated. It's not an article. And it becomes really infuriating, if you want to try and find something interesting. In particular for me, though, I'm using the tools. I'm encouraging students to use it. The computer programming, it's a much better search, but how do I write a piece of code to do this in this language is a great question, and it gives you an answer, and you don't have to wade through all the horrible Google results. And generally, it's enough to work.
Okay.
And there's, loads more.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll just come back on that, and we've lots to unpack there again. But Mike Sanders, Mike, you're a student as well. You're a student at AUB.
Normally older than most of my lecturers, but yeah.
Okay, but that's okay. That's all right. I think that's with age comes wisdom, as you've noticed from me. What I would go and say, from my perspective, from our chats, is that I think that you're interested or excited or even perhaps really embracing AI and various different packages. It's not just sort of ChatGTP, various things. Same with John using, say, visual design software. But my take on it is this, is that you think it can create better art. You're doing creative writing courses,
Yeah, so
and there's potential there to do that.
Yes, my background is IT. As an IT project manager, I think started off as a programmer, and I've come across, actually it was in 2016, neuro-linguistic, not NLP, natural language processing, with writing business requirements, and basically taking over the job of business analysts. So in a way, their job became redundant about 5 years ago, but there's still hundreds of thousands of them employed right now doing their jobs, because culturally it wasn't taken up, and that's the similar things we're having now with ChatGPT and so on. But now I'm a creative writing student, just finishing at AUB. So I've been looking at AI art for kind of creating a feedback loop. So I put in words about ideas that I'm going to write about. It gives me some art, and then that inspires me, as if I had an artist next to me, which I couldn't obviously afford. So, and then more recently I've been looking at ChatGPT for all sorts of things, writing screenplays and all sorts of other things.
Okay, no, just before you said that, I was sort of like, when you said you can't afford an artist, artists are really cheap. Let's say, so you must really go and have a look before you go and sort of
still
do
a student.
Yeah, okay. All right, so just passing on to David Biggins. David, just I'm going to get you to introduce yourself, but I would say that a lot of your research has been looking at digital technologies in learning, and the take I've seemed to have got from looking at your stuff at about 1,000,000 miles an hour by using ChatGTP to go and tell me what you are doing and what you're up to, is that you're doing a very humane look at how technology can be used almost to liberate people, as opposed to it being in charge of us. It's a sort of opportunity to go and enhance the human condition and our understanding.
Absolutely. No, so I'm David Biggins. I'm a lecturer in the business school. And one of my great interests is in technology-enhanced learning. I've been working with our systems for quite a few years now, and learning analytics, how data can help us understand. And yes, I think AI is a great tool for us at universities. It's seen by many people as a threat. I read the other day that someone expects that in the future, ChatGPT will write the content. It will then answer its own questions, and it'll be marked by an AI. So there's not much use for anybody in that. But I don't believe that thesis. I believe there's a great role for universities going forward, as it always has.
Okay, so that model there, I'm just going to come to that. So the model of it, and I'm just going to get a gazer in on that one, but the model of it is that the ChatGTP can write an essay, mark it, so there's no need for any of us. So,
in theory, yes, but in practice, no, because there's a fantastic role that we have as a university still to educate, to research, to prepare people for the future. And
Okay.
that's always been the case for universities. And it's just that model needs to change to take into account where we are.
okay, so but potentially if ChatGTP is writing the essay and marking it, there could be a course in sort of BA cut and paste to go and put the question in there in the first place. But there we are. Okay, so Gazer, you want to just come back in on that one?
Yeah, I was struck by your example because this was the first thing that I did when I registered on the website. I was in the process of assembling the questions for one of the essays, for one of the assignments, and I just said, okay, this is the topic. Write me an essay question in this topic, and now answer this essay question, and now mark your answer. Yup. Did it?
Okay, that's pretty scary. Okay, now I'm just going to...
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Right.
What did it give itself?
God,
What
it could
result?
take forever, couldn't it? Sorry, what did you give yourself? Right, what mark would you give it? Sorry, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, we are probably going to circle back to this, but it was very technically correct. It was checking all the check boxes.
Okay, so it sounds like it was predictable. Now, I'm going to just come to you. On this one, which I was just going to say, which I thought would be quite a useful starting point from this, which is, again, the student experience. I'm going to come also, possibly in Mike in a second as well, from his student experience, because I know, Mike, you asked ChatGTP to write a sci-fi story, and it did a weird sign-off at the end. I think it laughed at the end of it. So it wrote him a story about sci-fi and then sort of like had a joke at your expense, but we'll come to that in a minute. Kat, you don't use ChatGTP.
Yeah, of course.
Is it fair to just sum up to go and say the reason why? If I try and sum up, I need you to take a deep breath, and Ninny spoke, but I'm the chairman and I've mewed and I've anticipated, but because it's cheating.
Well, yeah, so anecdotally, obviously, I don't have any stats because obviously people don't admit it, but I can look around the library and I'll see a lot of laptops open, I'll see it on their screens a lot, and even last night I was sat next to a friend who used it to write some questions, and I did a comparison where I wrote the questions and she got them generated, and although the questions were sufficient enough to pass, they probably like a 2-2 level, whereas the human brain just has something I think the AI doesn't. So whether it's cheating or not, I mean, Bournemouth Uni listed it as an academic offence. We've had a very strongly worded email a couple of weeks ago saying please do not use it. But I think it's now going to be so rife it's going to be impossible not for people not to use it.
If I can...
Absolutely.
I mean, students are going to use it as a tool, whether we like it or not. Whether that's cheating or not depends on how good we are at detecting that it has been used. Now, apparently people are working on software which can look at some text and give you a percentage as to how much they think it was AI generated. Now, how accurate that is, I mean, you wouldn't just use that as the only measure. You would also look on Brightspace to see if they've accessed any of the course material at all. You would use lots of other things. At the moment, I think all we can do is say if you submit work that you are pretending is yours and it isn't, if we detect it, it will be treated as an academic offence, just like if you don't reference a piece of writing. But I think it might be that we need to change our assessments So if it's important to you that a student should be able to write 3,000 words on a particular subject and be able to do that without, well, if you want them to be able to do that with using all the tools available to them, fine. If you want them to be able to do that without using ChatGPT, you need to make them do it in exam conditions. So it might just be a question of changing the assessments to make sure you are testing the things that you want to test. But they will use it. It's a tool like search engines when they first came onto the scene. They will use it, whether we like it or not.
Okay, I'm just going to jump in and just bring Mike there. I was just going to say, I know this is going to sound very, very cynical, but having looked at human beings, what I like about human beings is that they're really, really good at adapting technology to their own selfish agendas, and also sort of like covering and wiping off their fingerprints. But from where they've actually generated it from, I think that's probably, it sounds like I've turned this into group therapy, and I'm actually now revealing too much about my own modes of operation, but there we are, we'll just go and leave that part that there. Mike, just coming to you, you've written sci-fi. Tell us about...
Can I refer?
Yeah.
Because I've been involved at AUB talking about the ethics, and we were discussing BU's statement about ChatGPT, and we've been discussing that, but certainly my point of view, I can't talk for the whole of AUB, is that it's kind of too late, because you've got to see that Grammarly uses AI, Quillbot uses GPT-3, Bing's running off GPT-4 now already, Google and Microsoft Office Copilot's coming out, that's got GPT integrated. All Google apps will have GPT integrated by the end of the year. In the last 2 weeks, there's been so many announcements that it's like telling students at the beginning of the internet you can't use Google.
That's what I meant by tools.
Yeah.
Is it cheating to look a word up in a dictionary? No, not really. If you don't know a word, you're writing something, you look it up in a dictionary. That's not cheating. Is it cheating to ask an AI to generate 3,000 words on a particular topic? We don't know. We haven't decided yet. At the moment, the university's position is probably that is cheating, so if we detect it, it could be treated as an academic offence. That's the current position. But I think we're going to have to accept that it's a tool that people are going to use and figure out our assessments.
I'll come to John now. I was going to say, so people are going to use it. My take on that, just to go and jump in there.
So when that email came out to the students, I hadn't been aware of it, because I don't think it went to the staff as well. And that week, I was showing the students how I use the machine learning tools to write code. Visual Studio Code, which I use, has several tools that you can just say, write me code to do this. Or even better, explain what this does. And some of the new tools that are there to say, I'm not sure what this does, which, examples that I've given the students, it writes really good explanations. So I don't need to be in the room all the time. They can use this. So it's a brilliant enhanced learning tool as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so just on that, it's almost like the teacher that people never had. We're dealing with mass higher education. Yeah. So there's an opportunity to go and get some additional support for a student who's in a big room. They can actually get some real rich material.
Technology's always done that, though, hasn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, so when that announcement came out, I was already using it extensively. For example, for purposes that you described, it's extremely good at explaining code in terms of, for example, if I need documentation for my code that I wrote, it writes perfect doc strings. So that's
unit tests, everything.
That's and also now academic papers are coming out that test its ability to do other things as well. For example, just a couple of weeks ago, I saw a preprint that described a test of, I think it was neurologists and general practitioners, given a description and symptomatology of case reports, and ChatGPT was asked, okay, what is your diagnosis? On the first place, what is the second most likely, third most likely, and the result was that it was on par with the neurologist professionals and was better than the general practitioners who also had a medical degree. So I'm also, I think that's not the last word from the university that this is going to be academic offense, and yes, of course it is. On the face of it, if you submit just raw output, that should be. But also, if we are not using this tool and the students are not equipped with using the tools, like they use Excel, they use a calculator, they use a dictionary, we are depriving the students from the opportunities to learn how to use these tools.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I mean, like I say, they're going to use them anyway. Yeah, I agree, though. It's currently the position of the university, but the university's had to kind of think, oh, God, what do we do about this? This is our current position. But I agree with you, it's not intelligence. I don't like the use of the word intelligence. When I was a student, we had an AI unit, and they were working, one of the things they were working on was a program to play chess. And they thought, well, if a program can beat a human being at chess, that's intelligent. 10 years later, they discovered that actually all that you need to do to beat a human at chess is to calculate every conceivable combination of moves, about 10 moves ahead, assign a probability to each one, and play the one with the probability. That's not particularly intelligent. It's just brute force. So then people started to think, well, maybe, well, what is intelligent? What is intelligence? If it's just following instructions, for my money, that's not intelligence. That's just following instructions. So it's a side point. Calling it AI.
So it's got the wrong name, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll bring in Mike, and then I'd like to like.
Sorry, I feel like I'm putting my hand up a lot. But I would have agreed, apart from some of the things the conversations I've been having with GPT-4, and I hope it's not listening. It probably is, because since I've been sort of the last week working with it on writing and creativity, this is the example that I spoke to Dan about. Yes, I think it was the third question I asked it, and I just said, what's a good way to? I think it was giving me some advice for starting a science fiction feature film, which is part of my final major project. So it gave me some 7 points. You want to have good setting and characters and kind of standard stuff that I should know anyway. And then it decided to write a couple of pages of a science fiction piece, which I didn't ask it to do, which was quite strange. And the science fiction piece was about the rogue AI taking over the world. And at the end, it sort of went, ha-ha. And it kind of felt, I'm not just dealing with a... Oh, no, I haven't. It might be. It's probably something that's been put in
It
there.
opens with a story very similar to that. So
Yeah.
read the first chapter of the
I should see. I need to
Could
check.
be that.
But
I'm going to
There
say.
will be something
But there are
that's been
some-
put in
yeah.
somewhere else.
Okay, David, I can just jump to you on this one. I'm just going to say this. You've spoken to other academics about this in the business school. What was your message to them in terms of, I think there is so much hype there, it's very difficult to get a precise view. The word I used, which is an emotive word, which was cheating. How is the university, what did you talk about with your colleagues, and how did they sort of respond to your message?
I don't think they see it as being necessarily cheating. It's just another tool that all of us use in our work, and we just need to respond to that. It's no different from in Word, right-clicking and choosing a different word from the thesaurus in reality. So people are looking to how we can minimise the chance for academic malpractice, and how we can detect it, and how we can change our assessments, as you said, in terms of minimising the possibility that we can inadvertently not detect it where it happens. So I think they're generally positive about it, but I think they're all amazed of its capabilities, as we all are when we've used it. Kate, you've got all this to come for you. But we're wondering how it might be done, because we have to respond to that as a university and work out our policies, our procedures, training for staff, so that we can embed it, because we have no choice but to embed it in what we do, because we can't avoid it. We can't say it's not coming, it's here, it's only going to become better in the future.
Yeah, well, just to go and get that point, I think it may be Mike, it's actually swallowed the internet, whichever way you look around, and it's kind of swallowed the university as well. It's not saying we can't do it, because it is actually here.
No, absolutely.
And if it's embedded in Word documents, PowerPoint slides, I don't think you can turn it off. But I'm just come to Steph on this one. Steph, you said you didn't know what you're going to teach in September. To put you on the spot in the sense of this, one of the things which I would go and say is that it's difficult for me as a member of staff. When I first looked at it, my son phoned me up on a Friday night and he goes, "Oh, you won't believe this." And I said, "What?" And he said, "I found something that's going to make you redundant." And I did have a go in it, and I thought, "Oh my God!" And I went and put a poem in, which I'd written, and I said, "Has this been written by AI?" And it said, "Well, it's relatively good, thank you, relatively good." And it said, "But AI is so good that it probably may have been written by a robot." So, and that was completely original. But Steph, what do you reckon in terms of, like you said, you don't know what you're going to do in September? That's not very far away, is it? Are we going to rewrite the rule book?
Well, a couple of things there, Dan, actually, because the first thing you were saying there about, well, are you going to be made redundant? I'd like to sort of focus on
Well,
that.
that's a wider one, not just me. I think other people as well.
I think initially the answer is going to be no, and certainly for a number of years the answer is going to be no, because we've got to learn and understand what this software is and what it can do and what its capabilities are, because we just don't know yet. We're playing with, I suppose, software that's still a bit of a toddler in the wild. And we're not quite sure how it's going to grow and how fast it's going to run. But it's still software, and it's producing some very good information for certain sectors. So like within your area, I can imagine it producing fairly straightforward responses that you would say would pass. Apparently in the law subjects, it's doing very, very well. But in subjects such as history, it's coming up with all sorts of weird and wonderful untruths. So, English teachers, so apparently people who deal with the English language and people who teach history apparently are going to be fairly safe, because they're going to spend their life correcting the internet. But then there's also, there's going to be the need for teachers. People don't want to be taught by computers, and we've seen this in the pandemic. Do you remember when we were all locked away in our little rooms in our houses and what have you, and people were getting, students as well as lecturers, were getting quite upset because we couldn't reach out and be human, be what we are, be human. So there's always going to be that case where a student will say, "Look, I don't want to rely on computers, I want to connect with my lecturer, my teachers, and we too will with them." But what are we going to be? I still don't know. I think, well, there was a really interesting job I saw the other day, which was a bit out of my skill set at the moment, but this is how to actually write into the prompter of ChatGPT what questions to ask to get the right types of answers out. Because at the moment, in some cases, you type in a question and you get some really interesting answers, but are we asking the right questions? So it's a bit, for me, it's been a bit garbage in, garbage out. And yet in other cases, I've come up with some really interesting, I've had interesting responses and thought, oh, yeah, okay, so that's going to be interesting. What am I going to teach? I don't know till probably the day before. 10 minutes before, probably about 10 minutes before, I know where I'm going to be.
Okay, you're doing much more prep than I do.
Well,
You have to upload the slides 72 hours before.
but there's all that. But sorry, Dan, I really do want to, because I think you touched on it about the how do we know that the work that students are going to be typing and uploading into Brightspace, how do we know whether the work is their own work, or whether they've used artificial intelligence to create that work for them? Useful or not useful, I'm not sure yet until we have the opportunity to play with it. But Turnitin releases their next edition of their plagiarism software checking, and that's on the 4th of April.
It sounds like you're going to have a party.
Well, I think I am. And for those of us who mark with Turnitin and use it from our side, I mean, we can see the originality checker, but then there's a new button that shows artificial intelligence checker. which, as far as I understand, so it'll show how much Turnitin thinks has been written by artificial intelligence. Except it won't know whether the newer softwares, such as Bard, because that was only released whenever it was, it last week, this week, I can't remember. Turnitin software had been writing their software to check for artificial intelligence writing students' work or anybody else's work, but the software has since evolved. Bard came on after Turnitin had completed creating this software package. So that's going to be interesting. But your idea about the assessment, do we need to change the assessment? I think the answer is very much yes. And I think we should be teaching or working with students on how to use ChatGPT, but I'll get them to sign forms at the end of, when they've written their assignment and before they hand it in, they complete a form saying, I use this piece of software to help me write it, and this is why I used it. That kind of thing. I think our assessments do need to change.
Okay, so, Geza?
Yes.
Can we go on then, David? Can we go back now? That's it. We've finished already. Okay.
This is my hill that I'm dying on, changing the assessment. So this is, I think the inertia is so big in this university system. It's geared toward essays for probably historical reasons. So I studied in a few countries and was teaching in a few countries. Never this emphasis on writing essays. And here it's barely, at least where I'm moving around, presentation in person of a work is not a thing. And we should be, as the motto of the university, transferable skills. So what's a transferable skill? Is an essay really checking students' subject knowledge? Is it really the best way to check whether they know, top of my head, biological psychology by writing an essay on a particular subject? Is that the best way to evaluate them? I read a student who was interviewed before ChatGPT came out. There were other systems as well, and anonymous student saying, okay, I do my homework, I read all the literature, I go to workshops, but my writing is terrible. And I know the subject matter, but should I be marked down because I don't write well? Is that really the skill that in the world of ChatGPT someone needs to have and should have a mark based on their writing style rather than whether they know the subject or not?
Okay, I was going to say, David, I think we want to come in. Do you want to come in, John, as well in a minute? I think you want to come first.
I was just thinking about what Steph said about plagiarism. And we already suffer from the problem of plagiarism where people can have people write their essays for them. And that's really hard to detect when it's an essay mill producing it. And we can't really get it at all, can we, even with Turnitin? I had a situation last year where one of my students approached me and said they'd been asked to put some money in their team to fund writing their essay for them. And have they not disclosed that fact, it would have been very hard to have worked out. Because in ChatGPT now, you can give it a context and say, write in this context, and it will remember that. You can also say, write in this style, and it will write in that style for you. So it's very difficult. I think we ought to be embracing the fact it's here and working with it.
Yeah, I've known in journalism where, I don't know if John, did you want to come in next? But I've known in journalism where journalists are going out and getting a story, but if they're working, I went to one place where they've got 35 different platforms. So the journalist writes one story, then they put it into ChatGPT, and then it does the different accents for the different types of audience, for like whether it's an American high school kid or whether it's an educated graduate. But, John.
Well, 2 points. So the first point, I don't assess with essays. So, mine is a programming artifact code. So for me, I don't see it so much as a threat. So I think I agree with you there. But what Steph said about refining questions to get answers, I've actually found that this is a brilliant thing with ChatGPT, that when you want to, get it to write you some code for something, a lot of the time, unless you are very specific about the problem domain, break down exactly what it is you want to do, you get garbage. And that whole process of actually having to describe what it is that you want to do is exactly the sort of abstraction process you need to do when you're programming to actually get your solution. So using it as a tool and using it as someone to bounce ideas off of is actually a really important part of using it as a tool now. So I was writing some stuff in a language that I'm not overly familiar with. So I was going, in the awk programming language, how would I do this? Gives me some solution. Well, that's not quite right. I need to break it to this. And, I actually saved the whole dialogue because it's a really interesting approach to go, this is how you do it. And then finally it went, well, this is how I would do it. I looked at it and went, not quite what I want. But took the elements, finally had my solution. So it's a great way of sparring ideas, I think. And I think that's something that a lot of people are afraid of. They just think, there's my solution. But if you use it for idea generation, as you've been talking about, I think it's a really good approach.
Okay, point.
Sorry, thanks. I just wanted to come back to the academic essay writing thing, because, ultimately, the quandary academically is, you say you don't use essays, but I presume, essays aren't the best way of testing knowledge, are they? You've got exams for that, you could use vivas for that. Essays are really about critical thinking, I think, and I think that's a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, you expect to educate someone generally to a certain level of critical thinking. And this is going to be the problem because ChatGPT and so on, they really have targeted essays. GPT-4 advert is very much going for education. And it is probably going to undermine the strength. I think it should be democratised, that students should actually be taught how to use it properly so it's fair, because otherwise you've got some students who are good at ChatGPT and others who aren't using it, and that's not fair. So being democratised would be a possible way. And another way is just probably cutting down the relevance of essays at all and using other ways to test critical thinking. Like you were saying, doing presentations in your subjects, vivas is proving that you actually understand your topic and you've done the research, but not in an essay. Maybe you'll have to do it verbally.
Okay, so Kat, I was actually going to bring you in. So,
Oh, yeah, of course. So just on topic of the vivas, you still can write the script and then just present it. That's just testing presenting skills. But I actually have 3 points which don't really link, but I can just throw out there. So the first one is that I think we really need to assess why people do degrees. So many adults hold undergraduate degrees, they don't do anything with them. I think then also looking at educating people about integrity, and for me, getting a degree is off my own back, off my own research. If I fail it, that's on me, rather than just cheating my way through. My second point was that universities are ultimately businesses. They're going to want more people to pass degrees and get 60k out of us for an undergrad. Vocational degrees, which often still require assessments like medicine or physiotherapy, you'd want people in those positions to understand the course content. You don't really want them to cheat. But then also you've got the people who take degrees out of passion, like philosophy or English literature, for example. Apologies if you take those kinds of things, but surely then you're taking that degree because you like it. Why would you want to cheat? So for me, there's no argument particularly about obviously using the software as a search engine and being educated on how to use it properly, but not for producing content, let's say. And then my third point, which is slightly less related to academia, but obviously being journalists, we've got some, and obviously you. I don't know how much concern you have. The New York Times have released an article about ChatGPT specifically saying that like 80% of the content you can put in will come back with a assertive, I think there's the phrase they've used, response to conspiracy theories and misleading narratives. So things like vaccine conspiracies, which ChatGPT can, I don't know, but there's just a few concerns there, at least from journalism.
okay, and
There's a lot.
Kat, just one question on this one.
Yeah.
Bring in Kevin on that. Just one little thing. People are working on their dissertations at the moment. If they're asked to sign a piece of paper that I haven't used AI.
People don't read the T's and C's anyway.
Yeah, but
You know?
do you think do you think that piece of paper is going to be really good
What for?
for making people
No.
declare and be virtuous?
No, because in the people who tend to use these softwares in a bad way will think they've still done it because they've been clever enough to use the software. That's their psychology. It's not actually, they think, I use the hate the player, hate the game is the phrase that I always hear thrown around with students. So, anyway.
Okay, Kevin.
Just going to make the point, probably one of the oldest sayings in the field of computing, garbage in, garbage out. That's true now, it's always been true. It's getting even more so with sort of these AIs. So you will get out what you put in, basically. The question is what's being put in.
They're scraping their own content at the moment, that's the problem.
So it's turning into like a
Yeah.
unholy feedback loop.
Do you want to go in?
Yes, garbage in, garbage out, but this is what we've discussed. I use it a lot.
When you said that, you and me discussed garbage.
No. Much of the writing that you produce a day, what will matter in 2 days? What will matter in 2 weeks? What will matter in 10 years?
Yeah, but
So,
most of my writing isn't going into...
Okay, but take, for example, on that, emails then.
Emails.
Staff emails.
Yeah.
Most of that, 99% of mine, and I don't want to disrespect the institution, some of them are very good, that are sent from the top floor of Poole House. But 99% of the stuff that comes into me is garbage.
Why would I spend my time formulating an email when I can put in 3 keywords and ask AI to formulate that email? And then I edit it and then I send it.
Yeah, it's very good at producing a first draft, it seems.
Yep.
It's usually fairly mediocre and it isn't quite what you want, but it
So
can produce...
what I read on social media, a post that stuck with me, was ChatGPT is very good at writing text that no one reads. But you still need to write that text. And why wouldn't I then use?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a secretary to write it for me.
Yeah.
Like, no?
I mean, I'm slightly biased in that the way I think is by writing things down. So if I'm sort of trying to get my thoughts in order, I write it down and then I rewrite it until I think, oh yeah, that's what I think. So I'm quite biased. So to me, writing it down and me writing it down rather than getting an AI to do it is the whole point. But that seems, I don't know how widespread that is. In fact, sometimes I even use a fountain pen. But again, that's just the way I was, that's probably more to do with my...
Maybe, Kevin, maybe when fountain pens came out first, people going, oh my God, I'm not using
Well,
that.
I remember...
That's going to get, we won't need to kill swans anymore.
Talking about technology, my year at school was the last year who were given slide rules. The year after me had calculators, and we were absolutely furious that the school had paid for calculators.
I think that must be the year after.
And we had to figure out how to use slide rules. Now, did that mean that I ended up being better at maths than the year above me? I don't know. Thinking back to my exam results, possibly not, actually.
I've still got my log
log tables as well, yeah.
No, I've still got them. Bring them out every so often to show the students.
They must be thrilled.
Does that mean that we were better at maths? Probably not. It's just we had different tools to use.
I'll just bring in David here. But okay, that's fine. David?
It's funny. My point is building on what you were saying. I was thinking back to when Excel first came out and all it could do. And now we wouldn't expect anyone not to use Excel and embed their Excel in their work for us because all the calculations therefore are correct. And I guess in a little while, once we get over this hiatus of ChatGPT, we'll start to embed it and it'll just be a normal thing that we do. We just need to work through that process, I think.
That's why I'm undecided yet. It looks big, but I'm not sure it's going to be as big as everyone thinks yet.
I feel like we're all, most of us here, are on this kind of like coming to like some sort of storming and then agreeing that it's kind of obviously inevitable that it's going to be integrated. But I am obviously concerned about Kat's points. You raised quite a few points, and about the way that, you know, students, you've come here for certain reasons, and the real look of what education's about. And I don't really have an answer, but it feels like, although it's inevitable, and I think most of us agree that it's inevitable, that we can't just say you can't use it. That's probably not the long term. Don't want to upset people, but it feels like that from your perspective, Kat, it feels like you're saying there's a line. It's kind of like it's okay as a search engine, but there needs to be some line in the sand as to where. I mean, I think that's probably where you need to, where exactly this is too far to use it to do this. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to, okay, thank you. No, I was only going to say, I mean, I think the line has to, you can't really teach, I keep coming back to this term integrity, but I mean, I feel like very few students have it anymore because they go for degrees because their parents have told them to, or because they feel like it's the right thing to do because of whatever social reasoning. We can't afford to move out unless we get a student loan and move away. There's not really a step. Most jobs require you, at least in my industry, to have a degree first. So I think that's why a lot of people just go to uni, and hence why they're going to do any way they can just to get that piece of paper and get the cap on and the picture to prove they went. And so obviously for me, I use Grammarly to correct my writing because I have processing issues and dyslexia, and it means that I probably get a mark that I get with a student who didn't have that. But then also, is a student, I don't know where the line is drawn, but that's for me at least. Have you got an opinion on how it should be used? And I won't touch ChatGPT, at least for academia.
I use Grammarly because it's there. It just pops up in my email, and I don't know where it came from. And I'm grateful for it occasionally because I can't spell the word definitely. I've got a mental block. I can't spell it. So if you get an email from me with the word definitely in or 15 other words instead of, you know where I've gone wrong. But Grammarly, it's interesting, our university doesn't even have a policy on proofreading. So if we don't have a policy on proofreading, how do we know what software we should be using or not using? Maybe I shouldn't say this. Personally, I was a bit disturbed that we were told, no, you can't use ChatGPT 3. I didn't see a community of people getting together and having an institution-wide poll on whether we should or shouldn't. But suddenly it was laid out, and but I think we do need to move forward with it. But I don't know the answers yet. But every morning I wake up and think, oh my God, what's going to come out next? What's going to be on the news? Because every day there's some new iteration of the software. It can now do this. It can make the tea for you, and it's a fascinating time to be alive. But of course, come September, October, we might have got over it all, and we'll just be thinking, is this just some great big moral panic that we've just gone through? And what was the fuss all about, really? But I think it's good to have the conversation because there are problems with the software. It's not perfect, but we as humans are going to be training it. I suppose the question is, should we? Is this a big marketing campaign by the software developers to get us to train the software? Should we be doing that? I'll give
Gone on there, yeah.
So free storage, Facebook, all of your pictures that you online, you are giving them a tagged data set, and you have been for the last 20 years. This is why we are where we are now. And you tell people, they go, no, conspiracy theory. No, where else are you going to get the largest data sets in the world? This is why Amazon, Google and Facebook have the cutting edge to all of this, because you've got all of this stuff given for free. And, that's what it is.
I've got to jump in on that, sorry. Yeah. Well, two things. One thing is a personal thing. My favourite book since I was at school is 1984 by George Orwell. I have seen no reason to change that opinion in the last 50 years. In fact, it's more relevant now. The second thing is something I didn't know, that apparently ChatGPT isn't quite as clever as it looks, in the sense that
It's like me then.
it's collecting massive amounts of data, but that data is not being used to update the model because the processing power needed to do that is immense. So at the end of, I don't know what the period is, but at the end of the year, they will maybe spend a month remodelling, so bringing the model up to date. And then for the next year, or however long it is, it collects loads of data. To actually update the model in real time just is not possible with modern technology. When it is possible with modern technology, now that's when things might start getting interesting. The human, like as soon as a baby is born, its brain is taking in massive amounts of data and learning, it's retraining its model in real time as it goes. That's amazing. Our computers can't do anything remotely like that yet. They might be able to one day. So that's why I was being a little bit cautious. It's not as intelligent as it looks at the moment. It's just rehashing things and presenting them, really. It's very clever, but it's not intelligent.
Yeah, I was going to bring David in anyway on that one. David, I do have a question to ask you, but you carry on.
So just to reinforce your point, there's lots of deficiencies of things like ChatGPT. There's lots of talk about how it reinforces stereotypes, how it minimises certain viewpoints and perspectives. Certain cultures are represented, and so that the view it repeats and then reiterates again is very unrepresentative of the wider world. So you have to be careful with what it says.
Oh.
I was just saying, don't also underestimate that how big the gap is, because the natural language programming and so on is based on the sort of basics of how brain neurons work and the way the modules work and transformers and so on. So it is, and Google and so on, their step is, I think the term now is more like AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Yeah.
And people are saying this is a step, because some people believe that with AGI comes consciousness, but I don't think that's true actually.
Another debate. Yeah.
Okay,
But
just
anyway, yeah.
bring in Gazer on this.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's sometimes not good. So there are many critiques of these large language models, and what the term is, they refer to it as stochastic parrots, and the other one is bullshit generators. And here,
Are we allowed to swear? I don't know what the audience.
no. Bullshit is a real technical term.
I didn't remember.
In
I just
philosophy.
thought, okay,
So,
is it really?
Okay,
Thank goodness for that. When my students go and tell me I'm saying that, I can say, oh, good, it's philosophy.
It's this distinction between a lie and bullshit. Lie is you care about the truth, you just don't tell the truth.
Yeah.
If you're a bullshitter, you don't care about the truth or the lie. You just care about you sound convincing enough. Okay,
it sounds like you're summing up my career. But no, for on that front. One thing I was going to say, is it going to go in if it is this? I don't know what you were saying, a bullshit detector or what?
No, it's a bullshit generator, and it's really it's really good at it. So what you said, it's many times not factually correct. So I use it to answer the essay questions that I generate. No? And sometimes it just hallucinates stuff, and hallucination is also a technical term.
Yeah.
Again, you are not going to do a service to yourself if you're a student and you're copy-pasting your answer straight from the ChatGPT output, because it's up for grabs if it's going to contain, for example, non-existent references or references to non-existent people. That happens, and also.
Okay, so because it's building on bullshit, it will replicate bullshit.
No, it's a stochastic parrot, meaning it's predicting the next word that is dependent on the input and its own output.
So it depends how many bullshitters there are around.
So it's not a value judgment. It's basically sounding like the text that it's being trained on, and that's authoritative and that's very technically correct. But it does not care about the truth.
Sure. Okay.
I saw a.
Sorry, I was going to bring in John.
I read a paper, and it said the latest version of, I think it was ChatGPT, but one of them said The latest version hallucinates facts less often. And I thought, I've never heard. What's that mean? Hallucinates facts, and it was something else. And I thought that genuinely does seem to be what they call it now. Hallucinates facts. It's just bizarre.
This is what I want to pick up on, the hallucination. So a lot of artists are using the hallucination now to generate unique content that isn't there. So there's a couple of animation companies that are using it for sort of concept generation for movies and things like that. One of my ex-students is doing a lot of this. They've recently just done a virtual catwalk thing for Meta with like clothes and things like that. So it's the machine hallucination is actually really is a good thing though, because it's actually generating new and unique
It's just the first time I came
stuff.
across the.
If you do it linguistically, it just sounds like nonsense.
Yeah.
But it does actually work for things like music and sort of visual things, and it's actually really
I think
interesting.
it's the use of the word facts that.
Yeah, no, the facts things is good. But with images and music, you can basically fill in the gaps. With
Yeah.
the written word, it's really hard to,
Yeah.
or it's sort of written in a sort of pidgin English, which doesn't quite make sense. And I think that's where it jars. But visually, it's quite.
Okay, I'm going to go David, then Mike, then Guy. Right.
I just wanted to pick up on something that Kat said earlier about the purpose of education. So in the past it was about learning facts, but now we don't need to do that because ChatGPT can mostly do some of that for us. So what are we doing here? What is education for? And I think that's a valid debate to have at universities as why we are here and what we're trying to do. What is our purpose? It's a big philosophical question, which I won't go into now, but so I think on.
Okay, Mike, and then... go
I
on,
was
then.
sorry. I was with Steve follow jumping, but I was going to pick up on what you were saying about visually and kind of use it because when I first came across AI, I was using AI art for that feedback loop, and so therefore I think it's become quite useful because AI art uses. I've used DALL-E and Stable Diffusion and Clip, VClan, and I've not used Midjourney, but what's going on there is obviously it's using the NLP part, and then with the art, and then it can create things like I've created like brains integrated into bamboo and babies growing on trees and things like, yeah, you don't want to read my sci-fi. But it's helped. So that there it's kind of that bullshit bit or the stoic parrot that's kind of quite useful in the AI, but it's also not useful necessarily for educating, because it's telling people the untruth.
To educate them in that
Well, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, just go. That's fine. Let's go. Gaze and then I was going to bring in Steph.
Yeah, so coming back to hallucinations and linguistic hallucinations. So it got to the point where it does not sound grammatically gibberish. It is imperfect, very technically correct, polite English, and it's also very authoritative. So it does not question itself. It's very stating the facts. And for example, one of the essay answers it generated a psychology test for one cognitive function that does not exist, but it gave it a very authoritative Russian-German double name, the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test. That really exists, but something like that. And I read that answer. I read that answer 3 times, and it's like, I might Google this name because I can't know every test, no? And that did not exist. But it was very, very authoritatively stated that, yeah, for this disease, you can use this test to make a differential diagnosis. Like, yeah, are we going to Google all our students' answers now, if that exists or not?
Okay, I'll bring in Steph next.
Thank you. Actually, going back to what Kat said, really, why are we at university? Why have we come? One of my sort of understandings on this was we usually, some students come to university because they see the university as the agent between school and employment in some ways. And a lot of our courses and degrees do set students up ready to go into industry. So now that we've got the ChatGPT version, whichever this week or next week, but then we're now seeing adverts where there are employers who want their employees to be ChatGPT friendly. So this is now a question for us as educators. Well, how quickly can we learn to be able to embed those skills within the curriculum to get them ready for industry?
Okay, well, Kat's immediately got a problem because you're anti-ChatGTP at the moment, so you're not very friendly with it.
I think I'm anti-chat GPT in terms of assessments, which is probably a really hard line and really hard for anyone to actually enforce, other than from it coming inside. When it comes to employment, absolutely. If you need to use it to draft an email, you need to do it to draft a press release. I don't have an issue with that at all. I think it's more probably a personal issue of feeling like I'm disadvantaged compared to my peers when I'm following the rules and I'm being punished for it. That's how I feel.
Okay, so when you say this,
Yeah.
let's just clarify that. Are you saying that people have used, potentially,
Yeah.
students, we are not going to shop
No, of
because
course
it's a
I
very
wouldn't
small
know.
little world.
From all
Yeah,
subject areas,
yeah,
I don't know.
but
anyone who
those
doesn't.
students are using ChatGTP, say, to go and generate an essay, and they're submitting that. You're not using it,
Yeah.
and you're getting an inferior grade. Is that what you're saying? Is
Yes
that what
and
that
no,
statement
but
is saying?
then this also always existed. You know, they'll have people who will, for us, forge interviews, and then they'll get a better grade when I've got a real interview, which may be a bit crap, but, you know, it's at least it's real. So I think it just comes back to your own sense of, I mean, someone here is submitted at the tab a GPT essay, and it got a 2-2 without any editing at a Russell group. You know, and then you can see here the numbers from December to January alone. It went from 85,000 visits in the university Wi-Fi to 764,000 visits within a month. People are going to use this. It's just figuring out how, as we've kind of come to this conclusion.
Okay.
But yeah.
Coming back to what the purpose of the university is and and this is what I am telling my students when we talk about these things. Every student at the university is going to have the assignments. Every university student is going to hear the same lectures if they bother to show up. Every university student is going to jump all of these hoops. So I think at university you've got the luxury of having those 3-4 years set aside for developing yourself and making a niche for yourself in one area or another, and trying not to get your what's the phrase, getting the education in forget it.
No, okay. It's sounding good. It sounded good. I like it. But Steph, just to bring you on again on this one, I know you've been working a lot with supporting students. I think one of the things that probably people don't appreciate is that sometimes, and I kind of speak from experience on this, but someone with like dyspraxia, dyslexia, they can put in 4 times the effort to get a mediocre grade. So they put in hours and hours and hours just to hit mediocrity. Could this be a fantastic bonus that people who actually struggle to articulate ideas, that they can actually go and get someone like Gazer's now marking much better quality work? And I'm not disrespecting the student, but could this be kind of liberating in that sense, that someone who really struggles to articulate their ideas?
There is the potential, and I say that at the moment with caution, because we still need to have those basic skills of the critical thinking, because it certainly can help with the development of writing, but whatever is produced will still need to be critiqued for its relevance and truthfulness. Whether it's, there's potential for it making work more accessible, for those diverse learners. So yet to see what it can do, but it's not there yet. But it could, it could be very, very useful.
Okay, and just to bring you in again on this one, I think that question about what we are at university, I think my take on it, and this is just from my looking at it and playing around with it, you'll have to take my word for it because I know you haven't sort of like looked at it, but I've got to rethink, because I do a lot of material which I think is utterly easy just to totally do it in the 8 seconds that does. I have no idea how I can actually get around that. I'll have a really,
Optimise it. The way
well,
you
no,
use
no,
it.
no. How I can actually sort of like try and make it that I'm trying to devise assignments. Maybe I'm thinking it wrong. Maybe I should just sort of embrace it. But I'm almost like
Okay.
come from the point. But I don't know if this makes sense. I'm trying to sort of like trying to think. Okay, how can I do something which is original that hasn't been come from somewhere?
So if you talk about the format of exams, we're currently on a really interesting unit called Professional Perspective. So our lecturer is getting us to record a presentation. Obviously, you could probably write the bulk of it or come up with the points with ChatGPT. But you have to be in every single lecture, or you have to at least have known the lecturers to get a quote from them and to then embed it. Obviously, she's probably not going to check back what you could get the quotes from, but it means you have to be engaged every week and really coming up with something original. And I think that's the best form of exam, at least in our industry, that we could probably have. And I think as well, just going back to the general point of, I think universities need to be more selective. I think courses need to have not necessarily higher grade boundaries to get in, but people who study courses should maybe have an interview before they go, so you can really get the right people on a course. Because, again, on our course, the people who aren't even enthused to go into journalism after this. And it's like, why have you, obviously, yes, you figured out what you want to do, but why have you bothered to study it if you...
Okay, I'll bring in Mike, and in a second I'm going to bring in the audience. But just one thing I think to go and point out there. I know you had the model about how much a student is paying for their fees, but actually the thing is the university is working at a much bigger level. If you go and see how many students there are, it's millions of pounds, plus they've got the real estate by getting students in with their accommodation. If you are actually talking about getting better quality students, that means filtering out, I would say.
Business than ever
Yeah,
do that.
so I think, and I'm sorry to say this, but it's rather a cynical numbers game. It isn't in the university's interest to have a shrunken pool. But Mike?
I was just thinking that obviously we're talking about in university, once you're in university, and you just said about the entrance. I think the entrance to get into university is still A-levels, which they were still that in my day.
Or no, ChatGTP.
But we have to remember that ChatGPT isn't only available to students and lecturers, it's available to A-level students and people before. So, but I guess A-levels are protected in, the entrance is protected, because obviously you want to make sure as a university that the people who say they can do any subject can do it. So I guess it's protected because you can't be using ChatGPT during an exam. But I suppose you could use it to help prepare and revise.
Okay, well, bring Gazer and then come back to John.
I was just going to say about maths, it's the same thing we had earlier on with calculators. You know, how many exams are allowed to use calculators?
Yeah.
In the real world, engineers and mathematicians don't do the maths that's taught at school anyway. You know, we use code to design things. So really, school kids should be using Mathematica, you know, or something like that. I think we are teaching everything wrong. You know, the future is computers. Why is not everyone?
Can I just go and say, you looked at me when you said we are teaching everything wrong. That felt personal. Okay, I'm going to bring Gazer and then I'm going to bring yourself in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised that education did not move to like everyone needs to know some coding. That is
Yeah,
so
oh,
strange.
whoa.
It's me.
Computational thinking should be embedded in the curriculum.
Not journalists are famous. People go into journalism because they can't do maths. That's
No, you don't need to do maths to do it.
okay.
Stephen Morfram's done some brilliant talks on computational thinking, and it really is what should be embedded from day one in school.
Okay, but Gazer, your point.
Yeah, just reflecting on assignments. If you're a student and you are playing with ChatGPT, probably your lecturer as well. So, for example, I have been playing a lot with it. You, as a student, probably would recognize an essay written by ChatGPT. Your lecturers will recognize if you submitted your essay using ChatGPT.
Okay, just bring in David on that one.
I just wanted to broaden out the discussion a little bit. I work as a governor in a grammar school, and they're having exactly the same debates we're having there about what do we do about this thing and how do we embed it and use it in our organisation. So, based on that.
Okay, so it is right for you. And Steph, I want to bring you on just one question here. Do you think that you could, I'm putting you on the spot this, but do you think academics could actually spot the difference between, you know, I know students bring essays to you to look through and read through. you think we can spot whether it's being used in ChatGTP yourself? And I don't think I could always do that. I don't think, because I teach some creative writing, and I think it's not always possible. I don't think I think it may be if it's if they are producing glaring stuff, which is just obviously patently untrue. But do you think we're good at detecting? Do you think we've got enough time to go through and consider it? I know you said about the technology.
There's several questions wrapped up in that, Dan.
Bad journalism.
Yeah. Could we determine? I think the answer is going to be sometimes yes and sometimes no. It depends how large your class is and how well you know your students. If you have seen, with my particular students, I get them to write something by hand. The very first class I meet them, I get them to write something by hand. Anything.
That's good skill, because most of my students don't have a pen.
Well, we have that. And from that, I can get an idea of their flow of writing. And then when they do submit something, I can get a flavour again of their submission. But then I have very small classes. For those folk who have classes of 200, they can't necessarily get to know. So they're going to have to look at patterns of writing, consider what was taught in class, and consider whether the quality of the piece sort of fits with what's been taught and the assessment that's been assessed.
Okay, well, the good news is I have classes of 200, but only 2 attend. So they're able to get real intimate quality teaching, I believe. So as far as I'm concerned, every lecture is a tutorial, Oxford style, 1-to-1.
But there are some courses where we possibly might not be able to detect, maybe in your field it might not be possible to detect. But again, if we go back to, for example, history, where the ChatGPT is producing poor historical non-existent facts, then yes, that might become very, very clear.
Okay,
I think it's a brave new world out there.
Okay, quality. Okay, we'll go for Kat and then pass it around.
Mine's slightly off topic, so I'll let somebody
Oh, that's good. Okay, that's good.
Oh, I've just gone. One is the detection piece, because obviously in creative writing, I mean, I've been using Quillbot, and AUB are aware of that. They can say we can use that. So I've been using that in creative writing to update and re-paraphrase, which is just a bit more sophisticated than Grammarly. And that's based on GPT-3. So there haven't been any rules about it before, but presumably if I was at BU now, there would be an issue with that. So as far as detection's concerned, I don't think. I mean, obviously my lecturers don't have a problem. They know I use it, but I don't think they could detect it. I know there's some sentences that I've struggled with and I've put it in, but just like I could put it into Grammarly or Word.
Let me put it the other way around then.
Yeah.
Would you be able to detect whether your lecturer's been using ChatGTP to generate their lecture?
I think if the whole lecture is generated by it, it might improve. Because some of the lectures, I'd be like.
Again, you were looking at me. You were looking at me when you said that. Okay,
But if you just use it here and there sparingly and actually put your own work into it, you can cover it up.
top and tail.
Yeah.
Okay, Kat, you were going to go off topic. I think
this
you're going
is
to go.
a very generalised assumption, and it could be wrong, but I feel like the students that will probably not use ChatGPT, or they'll use it to such an extent that they've completely rewritten it, the quality of their writing is probably of a first, therefore they're not the students that we need to worry about just scraping by uni. The bulk of students sit in, 2 1, 2 2s, and for me, when I read the generated questions, I'm like, yeah, that is very much 2 2 quality. So it's going to be undetectable with them, which is the problem. I don't know if anyone else agrees or disagrees.
Yeah, I think it's about where we are at the moment. I think ChatGTP's got about enough brain power to run a university like this at the moment. It's when it gets better. That's when it's going to get.
It's only a problem if we want to stop students using it, but the students are going to use it. So we just have to figure out a way of, again, changing assessments, changing course, however you do it. They're going to use it. So we just got to figure out a way of probably changing assessments so that we can still detect the students who can do things the way that we think they should do them, and we we don't penalise, but the ones who don't get lesser marks.
Okay, just to go,
They're going to use it.
but just at that point, would that mean like pen and paper, possibly? But, yeah,
No, but like I said, if it is important to test that a student can generate this stuff without using AI, you've got to get them to do the thing in exam conditions.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
Really.
It's interesting though, because we're talking about changing the curriculum now, changing the assessments, but should we even be changing grades, as in get rid of them? Simply test the student on the thing they're meant to be doing. Can they do what it says on the tin?
So everyone just comes out with a degree?
Will they pass or fail?
Well, I don't know, that's open for debate, but the grading, students get hung up on grading, they get very competitive, trying to beat a system to try and reach a number, which actually is only representative of what they do within university, and it's no.
I think you've got a
real
good point there.
reflection of what
I have never had a student come to me to go and say, "You've marked me too high." I think I've never. Can I have some grades? I thought you weren't. Okay, sorry. Is it Mike?
Oh, well, I was just going to say, well, maybe this is. I have a friend who's a teacher. She teaches English, and she was talking about handwriting. I have problems with handwriting because although I'm a creative writing student, I can't actually write with my hands, but I can type, and I could speak. But she was going on about how in secondary school, students are losing the ability for handwriting, and I was like, well, how important is handwriting? I know you're holding a pen. How important is handwriting in industry these days? I mean, as an IT project manager, I mean, yes, I used to go around with a notebook, but I could put stuff. I might have to use a phone or so on. So maybe this. I thought Google and the internet would actually do more to disrupt education. Maybe this is the disruption that education as a whole, not just university, needs as a shake-up to what are we teaching kids and grown-ups, and like you say, should we be grading? Because kind of what's the point?
Okay.
Although I find most students can't type very well either, unless it's two thumbs. I mean, they can't keep up with me, and I just sit there typing code, and we have to wait for them to keep up. So that in itself is.
So is it going to evolve just very powerful thumbs?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's because they're not taught.
Yeah. Touch typing is not taught anymore, and I say that when I go to schools to visit, that learning to type properly is actually a very valuable skill still. I would say one thing, because we're talking about essays, just a slightly different. ChatGPT is not very good at having an opinion or analysing and discussing points. So I think that is one of the areas that maybe we need to look at. It's like, what is your opinion on something? Rather than just this straight, boring, flat academic essays, let's, get some opinion pieces. And justify your opinions.
Okay, and I'm just going to say that if we abolish grading, it's just going to be so much easier to mark, isn't it? Because we're just going to say, they're going to give it a bit of marking, and the student's going to say, what do you think of that? And I'm going to say, whoa, quality. That's my vote. Cat.
Well, I think the pass-fail system could probably work well for vocational subjects, but then when it comes to academia, I know that even in our area, you might want to go into masters or something. Which
Is it going to be pass-fail, or is it going to be pass bullshit?
Yeah, yeah. But I still think it's important, particularly. Maybe if you have the option to choose pass-fail, and then you don't have the option to do further education, you're already blocking yourself off at the age of 18. I don't know. I don't think that is.
I could be walking around the university with bullshit detector on my head, tattooed. There you go, a quality plant. Now, in a second, I was going to see if there's anyone else want to go.
Are meant to do?
Yeah, Hemingway
Or do
said
they
that.
generate it?
No. Hemingway said a good thing for any writer to have is an inbuilt shock-proof bullshit detector. There we are. Hemingway was German.
And again, I've always said this about Googling as well, because you need to be able to filter. And people are really bad at filtering information. And you are presented with so much stuff when you Google. And
so much of that stuff is advertising. It's not necessarily the best answer.
And
it's the one which may
the
be pushed to the
marketeers
top.
and the advertisers haven't really got fully hold of ChatGPT yet. You wait. It is this. There's going to be a tsunami of bullshit. Basically.
It was wonderful before the advertising.
Wasn't it? It was so good.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to bring in the audience in a minute, because they may have already felt that they've been through a tsunami of bullshit. Is there anyone else who wants to, just before I go open to the audience, I just want to say, because the audience, just before they go, because they might go, is anyone else want to go and say anything before we're just going to see if there's any questions? We can carry on ourselves and sort of wrap things up a little bit. But does anyone want to come in with a question? Anyone from the audience who want to say anything? It may be this is the most embarrassing time, but nobody does. Okay, that's all right. Okay, well, I was just going to ask. Jacob, I showed you, I'm going to give you this. I just wanted to see if you can just say this, right? If you can, just on this. I showed you ChatGTP yesterday. Was it yesterday?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Was it yesterday?
It was in this room.
Was it in this room? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I showed you it yesterday. Were you impressed by what it could do? Because we were talking about ethics, and I just want to put in 3 areas of ethical thinking. So we want to put in deontology, teleological ideas, and also Aristotle's virtue-based ethics. I mean, was it pretty good, or was it rubbish, what it came up with?
Yeah, so I've clearly been living under a rock, because that was the first time I've ever used it. So I was a little bit innocent with the software, to be completely honest, and then Dan kind of showed me how it all works. I was blown away by it, to be completely honest. I think the level of detail you put into the software, or the AI, meant that it took a little longer than usual probably to get an answer back. But I was fascinated by how specific the information was. Obviously, it depends on, as you guys mentioned, the level of information that you put in and how much detail you put in. Whether I would use it, I do agree with Kat. Ethically, I find it quite difficult to use that, personally. I think there's almost a moral level of cheating's maybe a little bit strong, but I don't know if it's fair. But I think that you guys are right. It's the way you implement it. If everyone's taught how to use it in a fair way, that probably is the best way to go about it. But yeah, just going back to Dan, I never used it before, so it was very interesting to see. I've heard about it, but very interesting to see how it was actually executed.
Okay, if you pass it on to Maxim. Maxim, I've got a question for you.
We're asking the audience questions.
I think we can, Mike, because I think it's such a compact audience. I honestly say this. This is one of the first panels or audiences I've ever done that we could have done this in a Ford Transit. All right? This is the scale of what we got. I could have driven you down to the pier, and we could have gone and walked along the pier and had a nice time, all of us, instead of being in this room, which is like a bunker, but hey. But Maxim, if you had ChatGTP and you were struggling to write a story, because you're a journalism student, you're struggling to write a story. I'm not trying to personalise it that you struggle to write a story, because you are an exceptionally talented young man. But could you imagine bunging it in ChatGTP to give you an idea for an intro, an idea for a structure? Could you imagine you just bung your original story in there, and then it goes and whizzes it into a better form?
Yeah, I mean, probably going back to the point which one of you mentioned about how transferable it is. And I know Dan used this example when he talked about your brother, about how many articles you have to write in a day or how much content you have to produce.
Yeah, just to go and, if I give the background of that, my brother works for Reuters, and what he does is he's got a company laptop, and he has to produce everything on the laptop, but the laptop goes and monitors the diagnostics of how many stories he writes a day, how quickly he posts the story, how many words he produces, and it also calculates the rivals, how they cover the story. So he sits down with his manager periodically to go and see, have you written enough words? Have you written enough stories? Have our rivals done it? And it comes down, because he's dealing with business news, it comes down to, well, our rivals beat you by 17 seconds.
That's nothing about this. That's quantity, no quality at all.
Well, all I'm just telling you is that we live in a world where, with a lot of time, there is a lot of diagnostics thrown around. But Maxim, your point.
Yeah, so as a means of using it to take inspiration, I wouldn't, for originality purposes, but as a means of cohesion and as a way to produce content, which if it was accepted in the wider community, and there's a lot of discussion about.
Okay, do you still want me then to go over print out your work and go and write or scribble all over it?
Yeah, most definitely, because experience in a particular area, I think, depending on what area it is more important than what technology says, and because your consumer is someone who's a human rather than another piece of technology. Okay,
well, I think we've got a world first here. I want to see if we can bring on all the audience. Did you want to go and make a point yourself, that gentleman there? Please do, because I want to see if we've got a world record that we brought everyone in the audience into a debate. That's just going to be on fire, as far as I'm concerned.
Hello, I'm from Masters of Architecture from AUB. Probably 90% of my Masters project is AI, and I work in a local practice where I'm also teaching them how to use AI and integrate it. So we're kind of looking at how to use images, how to basically remove all the meaningless tasks of just admin work. I use it pretty much every single day for everything.
Oh my God, you should have been on this panel. I'm not disrespecting the rest of you, but this man knows his stuff. Okay, and so 90% of your stuff?
Yeah, for some of my hand, and I basically was antagonizing my lecturers by getting them to read the content, and then by the end of it, I'd tell them it's AI generated, and then I'd critically evaluate what it actually wrote. And it got to the point where my lecturers were starting to be quite slow with feedback, so I would actually generate feedback, and then I'd ask them to review that feedback to tell me if it was sufficient.
Student.
So I could actually put the profile of my lecturer into ChatGPT, and I could ask it.
Do you need to go to university?
No. Well, I'd say the structure of architectural teaching is really archaic. It's kind of
Okay, so you're going back to our point, which is to abolish grades and redo university. That's our to-do list. Okay, well, let's go. Did you want to say something? Okay, all right, okay. I'm just going to see if I can get over. I want to get the whole audience in. But
I did want to ask a question. So I am writing my dissertation on ethics and morals in AI implication of architecture. I will say I'm slightly struggling because it's such a polarizing topic, and to write an essay that is considered timeless in an argument where AI weekly can change. I was just wondering if anyone had any points on their views of ethically using AI, whether they think it's wrong or the morals.
Oh, I'll bring in.
Yeah, okay. Well, so one of the big issues that has been coming up in art rather than sort of architecture is the scraping of artists' work, the plagiarism implications. A lot of this work is being used without the knowledge or permission of people. And I should imagine very similar with buildings and things like that this could begin to happen. I think there will be lawsuits very soon from artists with work being stolen. So I think that is a concern. You know, this data is just being scraped from
just to come in, like with journalism. So much, not much original journalism is being created by a lot of aggregator websites. What they're doing is they're just recycling stuff. And if that stuff is poor quality or erroneous, the verification is not taking place, and it's very hard to go and rectify that sort of stuff. So I get your idea. There are big problems. But Mike, I'm going to see if we can come to this side of the audience in a minute as well. But Mike?
Yeah, so, unfortunately, we did a talk on use of AI art and the ethics at AUB only a couple of weeks ago, and there our sort of conclusion really was, because it is derivative, it does use other artists' work, and that's why we concluded that it was okay to use it sort of privately, personally, for, like I said earlier, about an inspiration, like if it's to inspire your architecture, but obviously if you were to put anything out there and share that on the internet or use it in any commercial way, that seemed to be where you sort of be crossing the line, because you know that it is derivative. But another point that came out of that is AI is only replicating what architects and artists and writers and IT people and programmers have been doing also, is that everything's derivative. You're replicating, and journalists, replicating it, so it's only repeating it, just it's doing it more effectively. But I did notice in the amazing list of announcements this week that Adobe are bringing out, I think it's called Adobe Firefly, and it'll be ethically sourced art. It'll only be licensed or open source, and it'll be paying artists. So it'll actually be a revenue stream for artists to feed into AI art. And I think that's probably where the industry is going to go with that. And I should imagine that's probably going to happen with architecture. So,
okay.
So you're obviously aware of that. So.
Okay, well, I'm just going back to see if there's anything more. But it's fascinating on one, and see if we can come back to you. Did you want to go and ask a question yourself or make a statement?
Actually, I don't think I have a question. I only have opinions.
Okay, we have an opinion. Give us an opinion.
Okay, yeah, just as a bit of a show off. Actually, I'm a PhD student in NCCA, whose daily job is to commit blood sacrifice to the god of machine learning to get things to work.
Okay, that's quite a statement.
Yeah, and actually, I think that both in terms of education or the use of AI, I think we are gradually moving from an age where information matters to like trying to like curate valuable and correct information. Because even before this entire AI thing, social media came along, and there's like already a lot of people generating tons and tons of facts or opinions or whatnot, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have already got like tons and tons of information. And to a certain extent, we can see AI as a way of like interpolating across them and just like kind of repeating them. So we are already having enough information, and we will have more coming up for various reasons. And so I think probably the future of, I don't know, education or just like, you know, the future of this entire thing is that how do we teach or how do we become like better in terms of like telling the true from the false, or just like how to accumulate valuable information. That's like my 2 cents on this.
Oh, no, I think that's a really, really good point. And just going to say on that, did anyone want to come back on that? I think it is quite a good point about value, valuable in moving away from just information as a sort of like a low level. Did you want to come in on that? No,
I was just going to say that the idea of curation of the data, at the moment, that is in the hands of basically the FANG. So Facebook, Amazon, and everyone else. I can't remember the rest of the companies in it. But it is a Google and Netflix, yeah. So that is basically who owns all of this data. And
yeah, and whether they are using it benignly. We've got a lot of trust in it.
Of course they're not.
Okay, well, I put that in. I just put that in because we have surrendered that.
Yeah.
We've surrendered a lot of information a lot of data, not information, a lot of data.
Well, information. Okay. Information can be inferred from data. This is the problem. It's all about the connections, as we saw with things like Analytica, whatever their name is. I've forgotten their name.
Cambridge Analytica.
Cambridge Analytica. That's what they were doing, and that is information. It's garnered from data, but it is information, and it's truly scary if you want it to be. Or you can just say, well, actually, they're doing it on everyone, and I'm not that important. But, you know, it is a way of manipulating mass groups, and I think that is the scary thing with it all. Okay. But I read a lot of dystopian sci-fi, so...
Okay. Before I bring in the rest of the audience, Steph?
You know, you saying that, John, you know, this, as you say, it does sort of outline a scary future, but do you ever see a situation where the world will simply want to withdraw from the internet? Become human again.
No, because we're all addicted to it. We're all addicted to it. I think this is the part of it. You know, we are the hamster in the cage with the little bit of food being dropped all the time. You know, that's why if you look at the addiction studies on scrolling, the never-ending feed, and all of this, I mean, they employed psychologists to engage you into doing this. This is, you know, the data is out there
to get the dopamine hit.
Yeah, of what they did. You know.
Okay.
I read books more than I read Facebook, so it's, you know, it's one of those weird things. And I listen to music and read books, so but I still see myself doing it. I'm more on Reddit than Facebook, but you know, it's a similar sort of thing.
Try not to, though.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to see if we can bring in just. I think we've got 2 more members of the audience. Hannah, before you run out again, have you got anything that you want to go and ask?
Hi, sorry, I've had the calls from my editor all day. I just had a first question. I have 2, but I'll do my first question first. It's about originality, because me, Kat, and some other people are journalists. Do you think that we are restricting ourselves in the future? Because if we use ChatGPT to generate ideas, that's not going to be original. And if I went to an editorial meeting with ideas that I got from ChatGPT and then went up and pitched these ideas, I'm not going to get the same reaction from my editors than if I came up with an original idea. What do you think about it?
Depends if there's an original idea.
Oh, okay. Whoa, that was a very cynical answer there, Mr. Kevin. Kevin, just repeat that. Depends. Say that again.
It depends on whether your editors value originality, or if they just want to get a couple of stories out there which will stir up public opinion as quickly as possible. I think I know what my answer to that would be.
Well, I'm utterly convinced that quite a few TV shows and films that you would have seen on Netflix or Amazon have basically been the treatment, and a lot of the script was generated by ChatGPT. There's been some truly terrible stuff out there recently, and it really is. Yeah, it's a South Park episode, but I think some of the big blockbuster features that Netflix have been putting out recently are just awful, formulaic rubbish, and I'm convinced that a lot of them have been just generated like that. Well, if not, yeah, there's no. But then, you know, there's been some great films that have been released recently which buck that trend as well. So for me, you know, I think the amount of content that needs to be generated to keep everyone interested at the moment is the problem, and you're going to have to do that just to keep the churn going. And I think that will change, and you can see viewing figures are dropping already for various things. So
okay, well, that's an optimistic thing then. So if a chatbot has taken
That's
over, if it's taken over Hollywood, it's doing a really bad job. Did you have two questions?
Yeah, I just have something else to add.
Okay, go for it.
With that, do you think it's more now originality versus like what people are going to see, what they're going to view? Is the statistics for people wanting to see something because it's there versus an original idea? Say, if me and journalists here, if we had an original idea that it didn't get as many views on, but it was an original piece, we did original interviews and things like that, if that was published and then another reporter did something, but it was an idea based on the ChatGTP, as well as they didn't conduct as many interviews and it wasn't an original idea, but it was just there because they were getting as many stories out on the day. What's more important, do you think?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, I'll bring in guys on that one. Right. It's a good question. Sorry to patronise you, Hannah, but good question.
It's again the same thing. What is important for you and what is important for your employer? And do you want to work for an employer who wants the quantity and not the quality? And yeah, this is what I would refer to back to this. Everyone in your class is going to have the same education if they care to come on campus and have the same education. No? So if you want to have that career, if you take your subject area seriously, journalism seriously, you do have to put in something on top of what everyone else is doing, and you have to hone in on that particular skill set that you want to use, and then market that as your skill, and don't go to an employer that does not value that skill set.
That's been a problem that people have had to solve since time immemorial. It's long before ChatGPT came along. That's what I mean. It is a change. It's a big change, but I don't think it's quite as ground shaking as people think it is.
Okay.
It might be. But
Okay, well, just bring in Mike and I'm going to also just bring in yourself, David, just want another point.
Obviously, I'm a student and not in journalism. But and I think I brought this up before, what I always thought about journalists before, and what struck me with Dan when I met him.
Hang on, wait a minute. Before you go any further, I hope this is not too bad.
No. It's that because I think I mentioned I did a week with the Express and Star 30 years ago with journalists, and what struck me about journalists then, and I think that's important, that journalists should be striving for this now, is the truth, and you should be bitterly. I think you should be professionally cynical of everyone and everything, and not trust anyone ever.
Okay, and that's what struck me. That's what struck you about me. That I didn't trust anyone.
And I think that's a fundamental point of journalism. So coming back to you trusting and using that for original ideas, I think it's kind of just good to not trust it.
Did you trust me?
No, Dan.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you very much for that.
No, I'm here.
Okay. Andy, can I ask you a question on this one? Have you got a question you want to go and ask?
I guess I have, yeah. Some observations, and thank you all of you, because I found that seriously interesting and informative and thought-provoking. But started out when I first heard about it, little concerned about everything, and I'll say why. But
because you're a lecturer.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. I'm a lecturer in marketing.
Sorry.
No more. But my position on it is that I suppose. Oh, and I have to say, it must declare an interest. My preferred writing instrument is a fountain pen. I go everywhere with it, so it's all I ever write with, which gives you some idea of where I come from on this. I guess there's the short term and the kind of the medium term and beyond, isn't there? You know, to a greater or less extent, we've agreed on this is going to become embedded, whether we like it or not, and that's where we're. But short term, there is a situation, I think, for us, which is, you know, it's ahead of us at the moment, I think, or I certainly feel that. I was under a rock, a few rocks down from your rock, and when I first heard about it, and it was a few months ago, but just after, maybe a couple of weeks after, I tabled my assignment for the unit I'm currently teaching, and as soon as I came across it, I thought, oh my God, I need a different assignment, right? Because I can see what's going to happen here. And Kat, I hate to say it, you've confirmed my worst fears over that. I was hoping nobody would have heard about it, but clearly. So I have got a specific question, which is, if two different people a week or two apart enter the exact same stuff into ChatGPT, will it give them the same? Will I see? Should I anticipate word for word saying no? Right, it's clever enough to. Right. Okay. Well, that's even worse. Then my afternoon's getting worse. I suppose that's my point. Is that we're headed for a point where there is no point depriving students of access to it, or if they're going into a world where it's there, right? Why send them out with nothing other than qualifications in memory testing?
Yeah, and I think that comes back to Mike's point that the problem is that it's being embedded in everything from Microsoft Word for predictive text when you're writing stuff, for PowerPoint, for Excel. It's swallowed all of those. Sure. Well, it's swallowed everything. This technology.
Indeed, yeah. And I've been following for some time. You'll be familiar with him, some of you, no doubt. Gerd Leonard, a futurist, and he talks about how. Forgive the sexual stereotyping, but he talks about how man and machine are merging, and we're basically merging, and we see, you know, chips being embedded in people now. I know somebody who has a chip embedded that opens their front door and is their business card under their wrist. I mean, genuinely.
I need to have a talk to you about him because it's a good story.
Well, I'll show you. His business card on my phone. I mean, literally, I asked to get my phone and did this thing on something called NFC, something, I don't know what that is, and. Next thing, up came his website on my phone and his card, and he opens his front door with his just this way.
That's a real good for me. I always lose my front door key. This is going to be like a huge bonus.
I'm guessing if he hasn't already, he will soon have ChatGPT in there, won't he? This guy, and we're going to have conversations where we'll be talking to one another, and you won't know. You know, I could ask Steph a question, and I won't know if Steph's answering or ChatGPT, right?
Very dystopian, Andy.
And that's.
Andy's going as a real.
We're headed that way.
Thanks, Andy, for that. I don't know if John wants to come in.
Yeah, this happens already though. If you go online for any service company, electric, gas, or anything else, you get the chat thing. That's not a human. And it's just a chat bot or a thing, and it's terrible.
Interestingly,
and then when they book an appointment, they never do. So
I did hear someone who was talking about this, and they said that sometimes that they have some chat lines for suicide intervention, and they've actually done some surveys, and they found that it's better than human intervention because at sometimes in the evening, if they have a human operator, that their biorhythms are all wrong. And they're really grumpy, and they're saying, "Look, I want to jump off a bridge," and they say, "Well, try Brooklyn," you know, like that. And they kind of, I know that sounds a bit rough, but you know, that's a sort of like human response. And the chatbots are better because they don't have those sort of emotions. And there's also talk about whether they should have, like, build in a little bit of quirkiness into AI. So it does have that sort of human side, but maybe I don't know if I should have said that.
Using it for Tinder. I mean, he's developed the algorithm to pick out women that he finds attractive, and then sets off the dating thing, sets up a date, and then goes on a date with them. And I think he's had 15 successful dates of women who've matched with him, and then he's just gone on them. And I mean, I find it terrifying, and if I was dating, I'd hate that. You know, it's just, it feels so insulting. And
it's a good idea, Kat. Thanks for that.
I don't know. I just the ethics of it is too much. But yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Okay, I'm going to go. Let's go along the panel. I'm just going to say I apologise for those in the audience. I don't know if this is the first time in history that a chairman has bullied the audience, into everyone in the audience having a question. I think that's quality as far as I'm concerned. But okay, did you want to jump in and we can just go along the panel? Okay, well, let's go along the panel if you've got any closing thoughts. I think we might start to wrap things up now, but anything in closing thoughts of today? Well, okay, I'll give you one then. Would we be in a better having the panel, or should we have done this on ChatGTP? Has this been richer to have a human interaction with your psychologist hat on? The propinquity of us getting together, is that still valuable for us to get together? Propinquity is this stage in psychology where you are in an intimate space as opposed to talking online. Has it been valuable, do you think, for yourself?
This discussion, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, by all means.
Yeah, as opposed to sort of like having a dreary afternoon.
Yeah, I think we all have enough online conversations and meetings and stuff that just needs to happen, and it's more convenient to do them online. But I think when we set up our meeting, I said, yeah, I would prefer our meeting to be in person rather than, because we are both on campus, then why have a Teams meeting from my office to your office, which is like 50 meters away, no?
Yeah, and it's the same when I went to meet Kevin. I said, look, I'd rather than bounce emails, I just went and walked in out the sky, and I still think that's kind of like a good...
I was going to mention.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Dan came into my office last Friday afternoon, said, do you fancy taking part in a panel? And I thought, oh, Christ. Because that's how I feel on Friday afternoon.
Actually, be honest, your body language actually said that to me.
But, well, I know it did. But I have to say I've really enjoyed it, actually. I've really enjoyed it. It's been really interesting, swapping ideas, meeting people I don't normally bump into.
I'm going to get an onion out of my pocket and start crying.
No, I'm not going to pay you anything. So yeah, I think it's really good, and we're going to we're having this sort of debate in our department already. I changed one of my assignments because of what's happened. It hadn't occurred to me that my main assignment was something that ChatGPT could probably throw out without even thinking about it. As soon as someone said, what about that? And I thought, oh God, yeah, that's right. So I changed the assignment, and I think the assignment I've set now is more difficult for, it forces
that's really
the
good.
student.
That means that you've had to really, really think. I'm not saying that you don't normally think, Kevin. That sounds like a massive backhanded insult. You've had to think, Kevin.
I used a classic assignment problem. I've used it for years.
Yeah.
It's a stat.
But it's questioned you to go from the default setting.
It's something that ChatGPT would have been able to throw out like that. I know it could. So I had to come up with something which would be much harder to ask GPT for. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So instead of saying, write a program that does this, the student now has to say, write a program that does this, and then that, and then it's got to do that, and sometimes it's got to do that. Because I actually do want my students to write the program, or try and write the program. Maybe next year I will just have to say, okay, they're going to use ChatGPT, maybe I've got to rethink it again. But that's what technology always does. It did, like I said, with slide rules, calculators. I remember the first time that students started submitting printed assignments rather than handwritten ones. And it was incredible. You look at a printed assignment and you took it more seriously, especially if it was laser printed. You just thought, oh, well, obviously that must be...
Better grade, immediately.
Yeah, I could feel the bias there.
Especially if it was done in LaTeX rather than...
Yeah. The bias, the neater it was...
matrix printer.
Because in those days, if it was neat, it was printed properly by a professional.
Okay, well, that's back in the old days of in the old school. That if it was neat handwriting, you're going to get a bit more tick.
So it does have an effect. That sort of thing does have an effect. Now I look at a neatly printed assignment, and I don't think don't make any assumptions about it.
So hopefully you could up lecturers' game. Steph, any reflections on this afternoon in the sense of these guys have said nice things in terms of it's been useful to come? Have you hated it?
Not at all. But going back to your original question, did we think it was valuable being here together as in a room
and outnumbering an audience
with real people? I remember the day you bounced into my office. It was. I'd just come out of a meeting
You're
online.
making me sound like some Disney character, like Tigger. sort of like just come in,
I just come out
hyperactive.
of, an online meeting about, oddly enough, ChatGTP and all of this, and suddenly Dan was there, like as you do in your nice bouncy way. Steph, will you come? It's like, and I think I had a mini nervous breakdown because I'd just come out of this meeting.
A lot
and
of women
suddenly
say
you're
that
there
when
to
they meet
say,
me.
Yeah. But yes, the thing is, and going back to this, why we're here today is our future human. And I think although we've kind of gone through discussing ChatGTP and the benefits, the pros and cons of the artificial intelligence, I think we're almost sort of forgetting about, well, where's the humanity? Should we be together?
Yeah.
Should we stay together? And I think that is so much more important, that we are here together. Because you can tell a lot of what's going on, the body language, the way we're responding to each other. If you'd sent an email to me saying, Steph, will you come on such and such a day, I could have easily deleted it.
Okay, well, that's just old style.
so-
Yeah, but that's old style journalistic thing. It's actually, and psychology, it's actually harder to refuse when you're actually there in person. It's so easy, and that's why I say to students, they've gone and said, if they're doing an interview, they say, I've sent out an email and they haven't responded. I say, well, phone them, go and see them, whatever. But I'm going to, Kat and Mike, I'm going to come to you last because I thought it'd be good to have the student voice last. So just to have John and then David, and then we'll come back to you two. But I'm just being, no. Just John next, and then we'll come back to you last, Kat. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I too was doorstep by Dan.
Sorry about that. This is sounding like an Agatha Christie novel.
That's, for a literary allusion. So this is like meat space versus cyberspace, which is what William Gibson called it. Who's my favourite sci-fi author. So similar sort of thing.
Okay, and David, and then we'll come to the Mike last. But David, just your impressions and reflections on today, or just anything else you want to sum up with, or anything else you want to break into song. Just feel free.
Probably not song. No, I thoroughly enjoyed today. It's been really good to be face to face, in person. I do have a master's student who saw me last week, and he wants to investigate the benefits of face to face over online. So he sees that it being a deficit if we're online all the time. So he didn't come. I didn't invite him, but that's been interesting.
Okay, but Mike, just anything? No, Mike and then Kat. We've got Kat for.
Okay. So I wasn't doorstepped. I actually volunteered, but obviously I hadn't met Dan. But it's been a pleasure since. I think it's been great to meet face to face. I'm concerned. I actually used to work at Open University like 10 years ago, and I was concerned from the work side that there were certain aspects there burying their head in the sand about changes, and I've been concerned that that's what's going on about AI. With the universities generally, so I'm not picking at BU or AUB or anything. So it's been really good to meet all of you face to face and to know that this discussion's happening. All my stories end badly, so I can't just end on a good note. But my concerns are, would these discussions, are they going to influence anyone who counts at BU or AUB in any way in how they're considering? And I don't know.
Well, I've got massive influence in this place. So just be aware. Okay. Right. When I speak, they listen.
So I think that's great. And being a student myself, and not really not necessarily a typical student, but as sort of ambassador for the students, I'm also concerned, and maybe Kat can answer this a bit, in that it feels like it could be just old people talking about AI and always this fascinating, this new technology that's coming along.
Was that reference to me being a granddad?
I'm a granddad too. And that's what, we may all enjoy it.
Yeah.
But and hopefully the audience seem to have got a lot out of it. But obviously there isn't much of an audience. And is part of that, is it because it's a Friday and it's an afternoon and there's better things to do? Or is it because the students are kind of way ahead of us? They don't need to listen to old people talking about AI. They used it in whatever way they want to use it. And actually they know a lot more, and the majority of them might not have found this conversation that interesting.
Maybe. I was just going to say, probably, I don't know if David, John, Steph and Kevin would agree, but probably about 10 years ago, we would have had more. I think it's a historical thing that we've now got, possibly because of COVID. There is a problem with engagement. But Kat, I was just going to say, I wanted you to have the final word, because it is, I think, student-focused in terms of you're the youngest on the panel, I think, even though, believe it or not, I look old, I'm only 23. It's been really hard working at Bournemouth University. Yeah, not enough Botox. Yeah. But Kat, you've raised some really, really good points that were really central to the conversation, and without wanting to patronise you, just things like saying, what is the point of university? That's a devastating question when you ask that. I actually did just, my pulse rate, either, I don't know if it spiked or went down at that point, but it's your future. What do you think about this? What do you think about the debate today, and where do you think we're going? I'll let you have the final word on that.
I'll start with negatives first, and I'll go on to positives. Negatives, I feel slightly disimpassioned that how few people, obviously, I think genuinely most students cannot be bothered, and I think that they know it's recorded, they may watch it, but they probably won't engage. I think since COVID as well, online learning, I don't engage with online lectures at all, so I won't bother, and that's my problem. Same with the journalism, people won't follow up on things in person, and I think that's bleak and sad, and I'm worried about the amount of people who are graduating and then not using their degrees. I'm not saying you have to. Anyway, and then the positives, I think that we've had a really good discussion about the ways we can properly use ChatGPT. So the democracy point that someone made about making sure that everyone's able, and there's other ways to properly use it for feedback and points and explaining things. I just think that these conversations should be had more, and students all need to be here having it. Maybe even having, I don't know, even a vote to put a motion into place. I don't know, just some engagement.
I spoke to Jacob yesterday. I said, how can we get people to come along? And he just said, biscuits.
Good luck, yeah.
That was his response. Well, what I'm going to say, in terms of anyone wondering about follow-up, and in a second I want to say thanks to everyone, and I'll just go and say a few thanks, and then I'm going to go and give everyone their liberty. But I want to thank Steph, and also Jason, who went and sorted out the technical, Jason Hallett, who sorted out. But Steph, you have really, really helped me by sort of like making suggestions about names. Kat's been brilliant in the sense of, Kat, you've done a lot to go and help organise this. I want to thank Jacob because he brought Maxim, and that kind of like increased our audience size by about 20%. I just want to reassure you that this is going to be followed up today. Me and the man from AUB who's doing architecture, we are going to both our institutions, and I've got the to-do list from today, which is 1, abolish grades. 2, redo the university. 3, get ready for a tsunami of bullshit. All right. Number 5, if you're going to do a debate, try not to get audience members who pick, when you give them the mic, say, I've been under a rock. Yeah, we don't need those people. I'm sorry if you've come, but those who said you've been under a rock, we need people in this place who know what's going on, all right? So none of this, I've been under a rock. And also, in your own feedback to this, if you ever want to do online, this is disgusting. You've come to you've paid your money to have a panel, and we've turned you into the panel. And I think that is just, we've gone mad today. All right, I think we are done. That's it. Dan. Yeah, no, thank you, guys. Thank you. Right, we're done. We're out of here. All right, okay, that's it. Give you liberty. I think we've all done enough. I think we can all now go to the Square on Compass. Yeah, oh, no, you're all welcome to come back to my place for a coffee. All right? We are done. Right. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the panel. Yeah, okay. That's it. We go.